Redirected, score! Game 7, Montez St. Louis! We are going back to Tampa Bay! Cavalier spinning. Cavalier looking, trying to drop it off, brings it in himself, left it in the middle, shot,
Welcome back, everybody, to a new episode of Quick Strike. My name, as always, is Jake Ricker, and I'm here with my good friend Michael. Michael, how you doing today?
Good. The Lightning didn't play very well, but I thought, I had fun watching the game.
Yeah, it was fun. We expected to have a game like this eventually. I said in our predictions round that if there was any game we're going to lose, it was going to be the Capitals game, but we ended up losing this game. But you can't always expect to go undefeated. But let's talk about this game. I thought starting off, the Lightning actually looked pretty good in the first couple of minutes. Kucherov had a great chance. He had a breakaway, hit the crossbar, got behind Hart, but was just too high to not go in. So I thought the start of this game, though, the Lightning looked like their normal selves and how they have been in these past few games.
Yeah, I thought they were pretty good for the first couple of minutes. Kucherov had two chances. One of them went off the post. The other one was a really good save by Carter Hart, and we'll get into it later, but Carter Hart was fantastic in this game. Didn't face a whole lot of quantity of shots, but the quality of the shots were pretty good with a lot of high danger chances, a lot of traffic in front, which is very hard for goalies to see. The puck might not always get there, but it always will find its way to the back of the net if it does get there. And he made sure that it didn't. So he was really, really good. And then Hedman got hurt.
Yeah, this was the worst case scenario for the Bolts in this situation. Obviously, everybody going to this round robin tournament said, listen, no matter what happens, as long as we stay healthy and be ready for round one, get Stamkos back, we'll be okay. And then Hedman goes down. And Hedman was able to walk off, and I think everything would have been different, but his reaction of him going down the tunnel, I think, is what concerned everybody. I mean, he slammed his stick against the boards, definitely did not look happy. And anytime you see that, flashback to Stamkos back when he broke his leg against the Bruins, him slamming his fist against the ice, that's the first sign to anybody that something is not right and they're not happy about that. So I think that definitely didn't help the situation and was a huge bummer for the Lightning.
Yeah, and when you look at Stamkos' two injuries when he's gotten off the ice, the first one he had to get taken off on a stretcher, and the second one he was able to get off the ice on his own power, but he basically collapsed as soon as he got to the bench, right. And he had to be helped to the locker room. With Hedman, I've seen a lot of speculation on Twitter, and I know that's a really bad thing to do, is to speculate what it could be, but the fact that he was walking by himself was pretty positive. And, it could be this, it could be that. We don't know what it is. I'm not going to speculate on this show. But, again, it probably could be anywhere from a couple of days to, judging by his reaction, a couple of months.
You're right. That's exactly what, I'm trying to point out with his reaction, because you're right. He walked off on his own power. And he looked fine walking into the tunnel, but it was that reaction that kind of panicked everybody. So we'll have to wait and see what the consensus is now. Obviously, I'm sure you, as every fan knows, with these injuries, they're usually not very forthcoming on this. Just look at Stamkos' injury right now. We have no idea where he's at right now, if he'll play in game one or not. But we'll have to wait and see how this plays out. Hopefully it's a minor injury and he just thought it was a lot worse than it was. And he'll be ready to go for round one when that starts up. But Philly ended up getting their first goal in the first period. Actually, I thought this goal was a really good goal by Philly. It was a great deflection in front of the net. That's one that you don't expect Vasi to stop. So just a good goal by Philly there.
Yeah, and, when we look at Philadelphia, they're a very, very talented team. They weren't playing with Voracek in this game, but they've got Giroux, and they've got Couturier, and they've got a fellow BU boy, Joel Farabee. Love that dude. But, one player that basically was their MVP with two goals was Abel Kubel. I don't want to get that wrong, but I think I did. And he scored their first two goals. His first goal was really nice, and it was a deflection. They have those types of players, and they've always had those types of players. They have Wayne Simmons, who is a good puck deflector in front of the net. JVR is a great hand-eye coordination type player. And if they have another guy that can do that in their middle six, bottom six, Philadelphia's straight. Like they're fine.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the bigger concern for the Lightning here, after Hedman went down, things started to fall apart very quickly. And I think that's the biggest concern coming out of this game, is that if Hedman is unavailable for these next couple of games, is how is this team going to be able to play without him? Now they did get better as the game went on, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But that first period, the shots were, I believe, like 22 to 6. I mean, the shots were, heavily in favor of Philadelphia. The defense just kind of collapsed after Hedman left this game.
Collapsed isn't the word I would use. I would say the first period definitely was a collapse. They were very bad in the first period, probably because you had people trying to shift up the lineup and playing with different partners. Later in the game, and we'll talk about what happened later in the game, a lot of people stepped up, and I think they did a really good job. Mostly Ryan McDonagh. I thought Ryan McDonagh was awesome. He is used to being a number one defenseman when he was on the Rangers. So I think he did a good job. I think Sergachev did an admirable job at stepping up. And if Hedman is out long term, who do you put at that third left-handed spot? Do you put Jan Ruda there and just go two righties on the third pair with Bogosian? Do you put Braden Coburn there? Do you put Luke Shen there? There's options, and none of them are going to be as good as Victor Hedman. But if they can contribute something to the Lightning, I think we'll see more responsibility put on McDonagh and Sergachev. And from what I saw from them from this final 40 minutes, I think they can handle it.
Yeah, that's a good point. They did absolutely get better as this game went on. And looking at the second period, I mean, the Lightning pulled within 5 minutes into the second period. Tyler Johnson put himself in an amazing position in front of the net. I'll tell you what, playoff Tyler Johnson might be one of my favorite Bulls, because, man, does he always come through in the playoffs, which is going to be really important for the Lightning, especially, if we have no Hedman, no Stamkos in this first round, whatever it may be. But Johnson did a great job on that play, being in front of the net and grabbing that rebound. So that was a great goal by him.
Yeah, and credit to Tyler Johnson, credit to Killorn for finding him in front of the net. Braden Point had a brilliant setup pass to get it to Killorn, who got it to Johnson. That was a total defensive breakdown by Philadelphia. You look at it, both the Philly defenders were behind Tyler Johnson, so they were more focused on the people more towards the blue line, which makes no sense whatsoever. And Johnson was all alone in front of Carter Hart. So if that's Carter Hart's only mistake, when his defenders completely leave him out to dry, it's going to be very difficult to beat Carter Hart. And I think that we saw that in this game. And I think that if we see Carter Hart later in the playoffs, we need to find a way to beat him. Not like that.
Yeah, I mean, hey, Philly was 3-0 in these round-robin tournaments. They proved that they are a good team and they are here to play. So you're absolutely right. It'll be interesting to see how Philly fares in the first couple of rounds. I obviously expect them to do really well. But moving on in the second period, despite the Lightning having some better play here, they had a couple power play opportunities. Unfortunately, weren't able to cash. They cashed in on the first one. The Tyler Johnson goal was a power play goal. But Philly eventually made it a 3-1 game later in the period, and that kind of killed a lot of Lightning momentum there. But a slight improvement from the first period. If you, like you mentioned earlier, if you look at the last 40 minutes, just the last 40 minutes, you say, okay, they lost this game, but they weren't terrible. The first period was a completely different story, but the goal for Philly there was a big goal for them, because it made it to where the Lightning only needed one, now needed two again, obviously.
And it was a really, really good pass. I don't exactly remember who passed it from the end boards, but It came off a turnover by, I believe it was Patrick Maroon, and it was passed on over to Farabee, got a rocket of a one-timer, got it right by the shoulder of Vasilevsky, and I don't know what Vasilevsky can do. I mean, you look
There's
at the
nothing.
stat exactly. You look at the stats, and he was a 900 goalie, and you go, well, that's below average. He didn't really have a chance on any of the three. And sometimes you just got to look at the games that they're playing in and see the goals that they allow and go, did you have a chance on that? And don't get me wrong, all of the other four goals that he allowed in the round robins, he should have stopped. But in these three, I don't know what he's supposed to do.
Right. Yeah. No, I think you're exactly right. Those earlier goals in these other games, yeah, you could sit there and say, if he would have held on to that puck doesn't trickle through. They don't get a chance to tap it in. But these were all great goals by Philadelphia because they played such a good game. By the way, the assist either came from.
Gostisbehere and Couturier.
Yes, correct. Thank you. But it was a great pass. And my biggest concern on this play is how did they get so open? I mean, it was, he was all by himself. This was something that the Lightning, they've done before where they've left a guy wide open. And when that happens, more often than not, you're going to have a guy that can put the puck in the back of the net when you give him that much room. So that was my big concern on that goal.
Yeah, you're 100% correct. Like, when we normally see, like, oh, the Lightning have left someone open, it's like Sidney Crosby or Alex Ovechkin. No disrespect to Joel Farabee. He is not those guys. He is not that caliber. And those guys, I think, to the advantage of Farabee, have a very good talent where even though they're superstar players, they can make themselves invisible until the last possible moment. And I think that's what he did, honestly. I don't think there was anything that was inherently wrong about the coverage. Yeah, you could point at the fact that there was one defender in the slot area and everybody else was around the boards. Yeah, that is kind of problematic, but also all the Philadelphia Flyers players were around the boards except for Farabee. So I'm being a little bit nicer when it comes to the defense because they were put into a really tough position, and I thought they did pretty well. So this one particular goal, yeah, it was a backbreaker, but at the same time, like, we're also in the playoffs. We're playing for a seeding position. Like,
Right.
this game doesn't really matter.
And that's true, and we'll get to this also as we finish up talking about the last period here. But you're right, this is a seeding game for Lightning fans. They honestly don't care if we win or lose this game. It's, who we play, it doesn't matter at the end of the day because at the end of the day, we're still in the playoffs no matter what here. Obviously, part of how they play and how they look is a little bit of a factor, and then the Victor Hedman injury is the biggest concern in alarm here. But let's talk about the third period because I think the third period, despite the Lightning not being able to score a goal, was one of their best periods in this game. And keep in mind, this was the Lightning's worst game out of the three. And as I mentioned before, you're going to have that. So if we get the Lightning, from the first two games, I don't think there's too much to be concerned about. Now, obviously, if you get the first period Lightning in this game, and just in general, there's a little more to be concerned about. But the third period, the Lightning had the puck for a majority of the period. They had a power play. They kept the puck in the zone. They were, putting a lot of shots on net.
Yeah, the score of this game is not really indicative of the play. I would say the score is more indicative of the first 20 minutes. You look at the third period, and yeah, you could say that it's score effects, and part of it is Philadelphia crawled up into a shell, allowed Tampa Bay to attack a little bit more. But Tampa was ahead in shots, 11-4 in that period. They were ahead in takeaways. They didn't have to block that many shots. If you look at block shots, I'm not sure about third period totals, but for the entire game, Philadelphia doubled Tampa's block shots, and it was 24-12 overall in the game. Tampa had to hit a little bit more because they were chasing the play a little bit in those first two periods. And in the third period, Carter Hart was really good, and the defense was really good at blocking shots. You didn't allow a goal, which was positive to see because, you're playing without Victor Hedman. And it's a good progression from, giving up 2 goals to giving up 1 goal to giving up no goals and learning how to play with each other without Hedman. Because as we saw last year, and I hate bringing up last year, and we'll get to that in a little bit because of the terrible broadcast, but as we saw last year, they played without Victor Hedman because Hedman was concussed and didn't really know where he was. And that was not a chink in the armor. That was the armor being completely slashed away because nobody had chemistry with anyone else.
Yeah, that's very true. And just to clarify too, there was a goal in this period, obviously, but it was an empty net goal, so that doesn't
I'm not
count
counting that.
against Vasilevsky. Just want to clarify though. You're right. They definitely continue to improve in this game. The third period looked pretty good, and even though Philly, kind of went into defense mode, they played a good third period. There are some positives to take out of this game. And that's my big thing for me, too, with this game is that while there are some negatives, obviously Victor Hedman in that first 20 minutes for the Lightning, there's still some things to look at in this game that said, you know what, they did a good job. Like Vasi, for example. All the goals, like you mentioned, were, just ones you can't stop. But there were some positives. But so because of this outcome, the Lightning will now play. They are the 2 seed, and they will play either Columbus or Toronto, depending on the outcome of that game tomorrow, which is on at 8 p.m. Eastern time on, Michael, your favorite channel, NBC. But now I'm not sure. I'd love to hear from our listeners who they are itching to play here, or wanting to play, I should say. Because for me, I don't think it really matters too much. Obviously, if we get Columbus, we're going to hear a lot about last year. But both teams, I think, are very capable teams, and one or the other is not going to be any easier. I mean, this is the playoffs too, so.
Well, you look at the 2 teams that we can face. You've got Columbus, who has, a average forward group. Pierre-Luc Dubois is something special, but other than him, there's not really anyone that jumps out on the page. Their defense is fantastic. They've got 3 number 1 defensemen on that D core, and the others that are probably top 4 defensemen on any other team. And their goaltending has been very good. Put those final couple minutes of Game 4 aside, their goaltending has been very, very good between Merzlikins and Korpisalo. You look at Toronto, they've got an unbelievable forward core, and we saw that with the final 3 minutes of Game 4. They've got a terrible defense without Jake Muzzin, and we don't know how long he's going to be out. And their goaltending, Freddie Anderson has come to play in the playoffs. Like, he was really bad during the regular season, but he's been really, really good during the play-in rounds. So if I wanted to face a team of those 2 teams, and it's not because they have a better matchup against this team, I want revenge. And there's only one way you can really get revenge.
Yeah.
So I'm going to leave it at that, and it's Columbus. But, yeah, if we play Toronto, it's not the same.
Yeah, no, I think you make a good point, though. Looking at the 2 different teams here, obviously Columbus is that heavily defensive team, but Toronto is the heavily offensive team. But Toronto, if you on paper, seems like the little bit of a better team. But yeah, I know a lot of Lightning fans do want that revenge, and I think it would be very easy for John Cooper to motivate these guys if we play Columbus, because really all you got to do is just put up a picture of the Columbus logo in the locker room and just not say anything, because everybody remembers the year that nobody wants to talk about. But it'll be interesting to see, though, how this all plays out. Obviously, we'll have to wait and see who we end up playing. It will be determined for tomorrow, but we'll see how this all plays out. Now, is there anything else you want to add, Michael?
Yes. I have been wanting to go on this rant for about an hour now.
Yes, I'm excited for this. We're in
Okay.
for treat. So
in the second period, there was a penalty called, and it was not against the Flyers. It was against the Lightning. I want to make something very clear. There were things in this game that were not called against the Lightning. There were things in this game that were not called against the Flyers. The referees have been awful in these play-in rounds and in these qualifying rounds for the round robin. But this particular play infuriated me for 2 specific reasons. Number 1, Blake Coleman gets nailed on the boards. And I'm so angry I can't even remember who it was by. but he gets nailed. He goes head first into the boards. That is an easy call. No, you don't need to do anything. You just blow your whistle, you call penalty. Nothing called. Okay, fine. If you want to be that way, fine. Then Zach Bogosian comes over, and he challenges the Philadelphia player that hit Blake Coleman.
Standing up for his teammate.
And if Zach Bogosian would have taken his glove off and sucker punched him in the face, I would have said, fine, give him a penalty. He punched him in the face. Bogosian didn't do that. Bogosian took off his gloves and was goading him into going into a fight. And he didn't go into the fight because, you know what? He played it very intelligently. He thought
did.
He thought that the refs would, and they did, call a penalty against Bogosian if he would have dropped the gloves, and he didn't respond. The player in question is Scott Laughton. And Scott Laughton, how dare you? How dare you have such arrogance? But if you're not going to call Blake Coleman getting face planted into the boards, but you're going to call Zach Bogosian taking his gloves off and not even doing anything, I don't know what we're doing here. Consistently inconsistent. This is the referee motto that probably hangs in their dressing rooms. I wonder, I am so curious as to how they see the same things over and over again, and they call it once and they don't call it again. Because guess what? Coleman cross-checked Laughton at the end of the game, and they called it. Do you know why? Because it was a penalty! It was a penalty!
Go off, Michael.
And Coleman should have been called for it. But Laughton wasn't. And that is my main problem. If you are going to have the best of the best referees in this bubble, you need to have them be consistent. If they're going to be consistent in one area, let them be consistent in that one area. If they're going to be consistent in the other area and not call anything, let them do that instead. But they have to pick a side. And until they do, we're going to have the same conversation over and over and over again.
Yeah, and you nailed it. You know what made this even worse for me, too, was the type of call they made on Bogosian. It was unsportsmanlike conduct. So, hang on. It's unsportsmanlike now for you to stand up for your teammate after he just got checked in the back with his head going towards the boards. Okay, that makes sense. And you're right. He played this very well, obviously not dropping the gloves because he knew, and not only, getting the penalty or getting that power play, but, we talked about this in an earlier episode. The momentum swings are largely going to come from power plays in fights like this. So, that fight, if Bogosian knocks him out, the Lightning could get a huge jolt of energy there. And maybe the game changes, who knows? So these penalty calls, they have a big impact on the game, more so than they used to. And I think, make sure everybody understands, this is obviously not why the Lightning lost this game.
100%.
There were plenty of other reasons. But this is something that you can see and concerns people, because if this happens in a different situation where both teams are playing really well, this can easily make a huge impact on the game and potentially change the outcome. So, yeah.
I think about it this way. If Alex Ovechkin got, number one, destroyed into the boards by, let's say, and I don't want to pick on anybody in particular because Scott Lund is a fine top 9 forward, but let's just say Blake Coleman. Let's say Blake Coleman nails Alex Ovechkin. Number one, Blake Coleman should get a penalty. Number two, Tom Wilson is going to come over and try to goad Blake Coleman.
Oh, absolutely.
Don't call a penalty on Tom Wilson because he's standing up for his teammate.
Agreed.
So
100% agreed.
Angry at these refs. And the fact that these games are on NBC is not helping. But
No.
that is a rant for another time.
And we're gonna wrap it up here soon. But also to your point, I might have to mute the TV if we play Columbus, because that is going to be fun.
You're not going to be the only one. I covered the game for Baybolts today. At least 5 people said we're not going to watch the game with audio on it if we play Columbus. And I think we might be forced to if we watch the game, which will suck.
Right.
Cover the game.
Obviously.
But
what are you going to do?
What are we going to do?
Yeah. Well, so to wrap this up, obviously this was not the Lightning's best game out of the 3-round robin, but at the end of the day, as depending on Hedman's injury here, hopefully it is short term, and he can get back to things as soon as possible. But I think looking at the round robin as a whole, the Lightning did play well. Going 2-1 in a round robin tournament, you can't be too upset with this. I think it was a frustrating first period, and especially frustrating with Hedman's injury, but I am not overly concerned. I am excited to see how this team does in this first round, and I'm looking forward to the challenge of either Toronto and Columbus.
I agree. And you know what? We have to give props where it's due. Philly is a fantastic team.
Absolutely.
And if they wouldn't have beaten all 3 teams, if they weren't a fantastic team, I fully expected Washington to win the round robin. I know you and Phil projected Tampa would, and Philadelphia steamrolled them both.
Yep.
So that is a testament to how good they are, especially with the fact that, the Lightning did pretty well in the first 2 round robin games. So, hats off to Philly. They played really well. They got the better end of the stick tonight, but hopefully if we face them in the playoffs, it'll be a different result.
And I would love to see that matchup coming forward. So that's all we have for today, guys. I hope you all enjoyed. As always, if you enjoyed the video, make sure you hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Ring the bell so you don't miss out any more content like this. Check out our description for our affiliated links, links to our website and social media pages. Also, be sure to leave a comment on what you would like to see us talk about next. And I hope you guys enjoyed the video element to this one. A new edition that we may continue in the near future. But hope you all had a great day. Go Bolts as always, and we'll talk to you in the next one.